All right, welcome back everyone to the HSP. Today I have a special guest. I actually found him on Instagram. His Instagram is very interesting. You know, I I found him through this guy named Eben and then another artist named Mike, and I'm very glad we kind of connected. And so Jarrett, this
Mm.
is the soul of Jarrett. And
Hello.
and how did the Soul of Jarrett podcast and movement begin?
My God. You know what? I had a feeling that you would come with some good questions. You seem like that. I never have like structure to my podcast, but I was like, I bet this guy has like good questions ready. So this is good. Um, Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
Soul of Jarrett. You know, I have gone through, I feel like I've lived many lifetimes in my 24 years. I was a bodybuilder, personal trainer. I was a real estate agent. I've had all these different phases, but throughout all of them, I've always put out content around it, just like innately feeling called to like try and build a brand around what I'm interested in at the moment. But then I had an interesting time in life where I deleted my old social medias and I really went under construction. And when I came back out and I decided I wanted to start talking again, I was just like fiddling around with like Instagram handles. And, I was like deep in my spiritual route at this point. And, I was just like I don't know. Ideas are a funny thing, it's like, are
Mhm.
we creating them or are we just receiving them, you know? So it came to me, that was my name, and I put out content for a year and nobody gave a fuck. And, I got 4 likes and, and then I just kept following my truth and acting on inspiration. And the next thing you know, I'm traveling across the country with a microphone and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a podcast. And I was like, well, what am I going to call it? Soul of Jarrett podcast. Just keeping it simple,
Nice.
And, through this, I'm a communicator. I'm a Gemini. I'm just always had the feeling to like need to express myself. And, that's manifested in this cool community of dope human beings that care about what I have to say, and I fucking love it. It like my Instagram and TikTok and YouTube like are my entire world right now. So
That's
yeah, it's been a
amazing.
fun journey.
And so, what made you decide to travel across the country without a necessary plan? Like, what was that like also to be like, I don't know how my next paycheck's going to come in. I'm not certain what's going to happen these next few months. Or what was that like, and what made you decide to travel like that?
Yeah, I look back on that and I'm like, wow. Even you talking about it right now, I'm like, fuck. You know, I have always been a very adventurous soul, always longing for adventure. But I grew up in a small town in Ohio where we never traveled. We did fun things around here, but I didn't get to like scratch that itch of traveling. And then I had my daughter when I was 18. I had a baby when I was 18 years old, and so it's just so funny when I look at my karma at like, okay, here's this kid who his whole life he wanted to leave, and now he's 8. I'm about to leave. Like I'm about to head to fucking India. Like I'm going off, and then I find out I'm going to be a dad. And then, then we're not together anymore and they live here. So it's like, I'm not going to leave my daughter. So I'm like, Sandusky, Ohio is like karmically entwined into my life. Um, anyway, long story short, met my fiance online. We spent 4 days together in Colorado where she was living. I flew there. We spent 4 days together. She
Oh,
broke her lease as soon as I left, she broke her lease, moved to Ohio with me. And then so we lived together for like 8 months. And then we just felt this call. We wanted to do van life. We wanted to do that whole thing, but we just couldn't afford a van. We tried everything to try and get a loan, couldn't get a loan. We were door dashing at this point, both of us just delivering food for a living. And we were like, fuck it, we can deliver food anywhere, like, let's just go have an adventure. So we did that, and out in the unknown is where all of this was birthed. In the unknown, I had to jump off the ledge and just trust. And I look back on that time, and that's something obviously we could get into and unpack on so many levels, but it's just coming down to like, I was really quieting the noise for a long time. I was really in my meditations. I was really in my, just trying to like figure out who I was and what I was here to do. So I was more clear and able to like make these jumps with like less worry, less anxiety, as opposed to like constantly being stimulated and having a job and having all these things. I was just kind of like living very simply. And that allowed me to make the jump.
Man, that's very interesting. And I guess kind of your brand is centered around psilocybin mushrooms, from what I can tell. And well, in some sense.
Yeah, that's interesting because for people who follow me, this is fun because your audience, probably doesn't know me. But like, if you just scroll down through my page, it's really interesting. I go through phases where like all my content is about meat, and then my content is about grounding, and then you know what I mean? And it's like I go through these phases, and it's funny because people have gotten invested in me as a human, not me as a psychonaut, or not me as a dietary guy. I have all these different passions, and I go through these stages like we all do, I feel like, where we consume something. We try to learn as much about it, and then I'm just kind of distributing that as I go. So depending on when you follow me, that's what you think my content's about. And then a month later, it's totally different. And some people unfollow then, and that's fine. But I don't care. I want people that are there for the big picture, not just for dietary stuff, because I'm way more than that. But yes, psychedelics, consciousness expanding drugs have played a huge role in my life. And I used to talk about them way more, and then I went through a long phase where I wasn't talking about it, and now I'm back talking about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you say they've had a huge influence on your life. Why do you think that is? Maybe tell a story of how it truly impacted you.
Yeah, so when I said earlier, I was a bodybuilder, personal trainer. I was on steroids from the age of 17, heavily. And I was 245-pound bodybuilder, lived, breathed, all of it, And then it was really unhealthy, really bad, physically and mentally and spiritually and emotionally on every level. And when on my 21st birthday, right around there, I did LSD for the first time, unexpectedly. And I woke up the next day and I never touched steroids again in my life. And not only that, I never even went back to the gym. I dropped all of my clients, and I began this journey into this person that I am right now. It all began right there. And then getting into mushrooms then, which really just, I guess what they did for me, if I had to like sum it up, is like basically they shatter the illusions that we have caked up in our mind based on, cultural conditioning and other people's opinions and, self-judgment and all this. It's like gunk, you know what I mean? It clogs everything. And, we're an energetic being, right? And when we have all these blockages in us, it's hard to be clear and like move through the world and flow and like be at ease and move gracefully. So these things help really push the reset button and allow you to see clearly. People will say like the most sober straight edge people, they'll do like ayahuasca and they'll say, that's the most sober I've ever felt. People that are sober all day, because I don't think we take into the, you know, account that like you don't need a substance to alter your mind. Judgment, energy, you know, cultural conditioning, all of these things are influencing us. So these medicines, which is truly what they are, really just help push the reset button. And you can kind of like reevaluate how you're moving through the world, and you can really see things clearly. You know, they're great for like addictions and just anybody, you know. It just really helps you restructure and recenter your soul into alignment, and helps you move through the world more gracefully. That's what I guess that's my consensus.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I almost see it. I see it very similar to you. I also see it like, I feel like people have this like narrow pinpoint focus. Like, you know, they have these glasses on, and I feel like taking a psychedelic almost like lets you see wider view. Like it almost takes off the glasses. You kind of see all around you. Maybe sometimes you're zoomed out and you're looking at yourself. You know, it's a deep analysis of, you know, where you are in the world and what your trajectory could look like. You know, it's so interesting. And, you know, what do your parents think of psychedelics? Like,
you know, we don't talk about it. You know, it's
sure.
like, you know, I was just having a conversation in my DMs about this. You know, it doesn't matter. Like, it's like a lot of us are finding ourselves in a space where we feel like we're living in an entirely different reality than our parents and our grandparents and our families. And that is real. And it's undeniable. And, you know, a lot of people, first off, it goes to like judgment and like anger and resentment. Like, oh, why don't you understand? But I've come to realize that like they don't need to understand. They're in their reality. They're having their journey in this life. They're having their own experience. And I'm going to do my thing. I think the best thing that we can do as individuals is to stand in our truth 1000% and not waver when we're looking into their eyes and feeling the judgment or feeling they don't understand. Owning your truth, and that takes practice, but standing firmly in your truth, and then you get to the point where they have no option but to like at least respect it. You know, when I first went down this path years ago, it's like, oh my gosh, he's like a crazy person. And then, you know, I've then gone on to take these experiences, integrate them, which is a very important part, integrating these new awarenesses into your real life. And I've built really cool, lucrative businesses for myself. And I now have a beautiful home and I'm raising beautiful kids. And, you know, it's just all that other stuff is just like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because like once you might come off as a crazy person in the beginning, but I have this saying, everybody acknowledges the truth at the end of the day. And the end of the day may not mean that 24 hours, but it may mean, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, on their deathbed. You know, it doesn't matter. I think that we're a generation of very special people going through a very special time in this world. We're truly living through a revolution. One of the biggest revolutions we're living through, probably too, the largest expansion of human consciousness ever. When you look at the way that these, you know, psychedelics have made their way into the mainstream, and, you know, things like, you know, even meditation and Wim Hof method and all these consciousness expanding modalities, we're living through really interesting times. So on my page, I kind of just encourage everybody to stand in their truth, no matter what that looks like, and own it, because the world needs our uniqueness right now, and it needs our light. You know, the generations before us, and it's no hate on them. You know, we didn't do anything to deserve to be born at this time, but we got born and during a very interesting time, and we have to own that.
Yeah. Like I'm reading this book called The Immortality Key, which talks about the history of psychedelic beer and psychedelic wine in ancient Rome and ancient Greek, histories, and it also how it might even impact Christianity because Jesus was born near Greek and in Greek culture, and it's just interesting because it seems as if psychedelics have been used for tens of thousands of years. But then back in like the 70s or 60s, there was this halting process of this expansion of consciousness. And, our parents were both born in the era where you shouldn't ever touch those substances or plants that, change your mind like that. And, I think you're right. We're going through a process. It's almost like a revolution where people are starting to recognize, there's insane benefits to these plants. They're literally just plants, people. You're popping yourself with antidepressants left and right, but then you're going to ban a thing that grows in the ground. And, it's interesting, but I try not to come down condescending on people. I think education is the key. Like, I try to educate the people I'm around about this. And, I think most people should at least think about doing psychedelics. Some people that have schizophrenia might not, it might not be the smartest move, but I feel like everyone should at least take a long thinking about maybe doing it. And, it's fun. It's fun to meet people that are willing to be open about that because I feel like it's been so behind closed doors for so long. And so,
yeah, but if we all, the way I keep saying this, like if we all just stand up and take back our power, like what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? What are they gonna fucking do? Like that's all we have to do. We can flip this whole system on its head if we just stop participating in these bullshit games that they have conned us into participating in, aka slaving in some corporation that is would replace you in 2 seconds and becoming just this. Our consciousness, I don't know if people know this, our consciousness is being mined 24/7 for profit by corporations, by Amazon, by
fast
even
food.
oh my god, like it runs deep. And that's the thing is I'm not in the business of convincing anybody of anything. All I can do is share my truth, and then you run that through your bullshit detector and your intuition. And if it seems like maybe I should try these things, then I did my job. Because I have nothing to sell. I mean, I have my t-shirts and stuff, but I'm not like an information giver. I'm like a meme spreader. I feel like I'm just like hey, this is what I'm doing. See if it works.
Sure.
I feel like that's I don't know if it's the best way, but it's worked for me going about it that way, as opposed to like trying to, because I'm not like an intellectual person per se. I'm not like I've never read a book. I'm just very intuitive. So that's kind of how I go about it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I need to get the info, and that's kind of what my pod's about, sharing information to others, that I've found. But hey, man, everyone's different, and that's the beauty of life.
Yeah, I knew you would be like this too. That's why I knew this would be fun. To be honest with you, I love having chatting with like hyper, like other side people,
Sure.
like people who like to have like I have never once broken anything down into like a process or like a step by step and like tried to understand it. I just like I do it and I figure it out as I go. But I think there's value in that because that's how some people operate. And so I love chatting with people who are more on the intellectual side. I feel like we normally make a good team.
Yeah, we do.
In like getting a message across. You know what I mean? Because like I feel like my fiance is more, she's very intuitive, but she's more on the like, in it, like analyzing things. So I have these big ideas. I'm like the receptor for ideas and inspiration, and then she helps us put it into a actual like plan of action and then like execute.
Sure. Well, that's an amazing team, I feel like, man. And what do you love about your girlfriend?
She is she's my soulmate is how I feel. I just, that's such a tough question, because it's like, it's such a knowing that like I couldn't, there's no one else for me. Like the way that our energies collide, and just the way we came together, like how magical and synchronistic it is. I mean, like, she saw a video on TikTok, followed me on Instagram. I happened to see it, follow her back. She messaged me, "Hey, love your content." I said, "Thanks." 2 days later, I buy a plane ticket to Colorado. We spend 4 days together. She moves to Ohio. I mean, it's just like, and then now we have a baby. And that whole story is crazy. This baby like desperately wanted to come through. We felt it, and she's incredible. And just the whole thing is just divine. I'm literally living life right now, like, where every single thing, every moment is divine. Like, I'm tuned into the magic of life, if that makes sense.
It does.
Do
you think your psychedelic use has impacted the way you view religion? Like, did you grow up with a specific religion? Yeah, tell me about that.
Most certainly. That's a funny journey there in itself. Like, I remembered to this day when I uttered the words, "I am not a Christian." Like, I remember how hard that was for me and how crazy that was, because I was raised, I played the drums in church every week for 12 years. I was all in on it, and that was all I ever knew. But you realize that, like, it just doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate anymore. And you kind of, like you said, you expand the view, and you can, like, for example, I can look at the Bible like for what it is. It's ancient text. It's like, this is a whole rabbit hole right here.
Yes, it is.
This is a whole rabbit hole. But just kind of like seeing through the illusion and seeing how these things are used to, control and keep everything, if everybody was I mean, you can regard that the issue of psychedelics is in Adam and Eve. In Genesis, it says, "They cannot eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, or they will become as we are." As we are. And Eve leads Adam over there. They eat it, and they're, damned into hellfire, and their children's children and all this shit. I think we should eat of the tree of knowledge. I don't, like, listen, everybody has a different view of the word God. Everybody has a different meaning for it. But I feel like God loves the skeptic. My thing is, like, Christianity is very, like, fear-based also, like guilting you into this, surrender, and, like,
repent.
Like, if God is so amazing and so loving and eternal and so powerful that God can create the entire universe, why does God need the validation from you in this lifetime, or you're going to be damned to hell forever? It just doesn't make sense. It's like, that's kind of where, like, a big part of it for me was like, why would I not be allowed? Like, this is what, like, I wish our parents and stuff would, like, like, realize this. We live, like, this is so new in the like, human history. This is so new. And, like, what about all the people living in the Amazon right now, uncontacted tribes that have never heard about any of this shit? Are they all going to hell? Like, I don't think so. It just doesn't make sense. I think God and the universe is whatever you want it to be, however you see it. Everybody's got a different view. And what's interesting is, like, when I left the church and stuff, it's like, people say, it's so funny, like their view is so narrow that it's like there's either this God or you're an atheist. It's like, no, there's all of this that you're not even comprehending right now. You know what I mean? Like, nature is God, like the current, the energy, like fucking do 5 grams of mushrooms and lay out in the woods and watch the trees breathe and watch the little animals and the insects, and the water is alive. It's all alive. Everything around us is alive. It's energy. It's not just like, oh, I trust that there's this God up here, or you're an atheist. It's like that. There's a middle ground. There's a million middle grounds.
Yeah. Or a billion. If you ask every person on earth, what is God? You're going to get 8 billion different answers.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I loved what you said. Like, God, if God were to love anyone, it would be the skeptic. I don't know if you know the story of like Jacob wrestling with God. In my opinion, that's a metaphorical story, which kind of illustrates, hey, if you wrestle with God, you know, your God will love you more, his name changed to Israel, which means the chosen people. And then I'll interpret that as the chosen people of God are the people who wrestle with him and ask him deep questions and stare him in the face. And really, what is all this about?
Yeah.
It's not the sheep who just blindly accept everything. That's
right.
Interesting.
Yeah, man. And I think, was it Thomas? I forget. I think it was Thomas. Who, when Jesus, in the story where Jesus rose from the dead, I think it was Thomas, I could be wrong on that, who was saying, I won't believe it until I feel the flesh wound myself. And Jesus showed up and said, put your hand in there. But only did the skeptic get to touch the wound. Everybody else who just believed it, they didn't get to see Jesus. They didn't get to touch the wound. But Jesus came to the skeptic and said, here, Thomas, here you go. Touch the wound. Like ask the questions, like be curious. And that's how the answers come, know? Yeah, that's my view on it anyway, in my experience.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and, fun stuff.
Yeah, certainly. And you say that you had, time at which you were talking a lot about grounding or meditation. Explain to me how meditation impacted your view of the world, how it improved your.
Yeah. It's really important to find some modality in which you can turn off the thinking mind, or at least quiet it for a little bit, like for moments throughout the day. Like, the mind is always running, but if we can seek moments throughout the day where we do something that brings us back to complete presence, I feel like that has vast effects on the way you walk through life. Because we're the world and nature and God and the universe, however you want to word it, is constantly communicating with us. But it's only in the silence that we can actually receive the downloads. You know what I'm saying? If we're constantly in this chatter of, the podcast we just listened to, thinking about that and thinking about song lyrics and thinking about this thing that we have coming up and thinking about this holiday and that person's birthday and, all these things, and, getting to work and like getting this done and getting home and hanging out with, it's like this constant never ending chatter. When you can just find it, it doesn't have to be like sitting down and, meditation. It could be, going for a walk in nature, maybe working out, cold shower, ice tub, breath work. There's so many ways, even microdosing really helps, kind of quiet down the mind. But I think it's really important because I think that's where we get the answers that we can then act on. We were kind of talking in the beginning about like, where do ideas come from? And I feel like the best way to channel good ideas is by getting quiet.
Man, that's a great answer. Yeah. I honestly have only meditated maybe like twice in my whole life. So I'm missing out on something here. But
yeah,
literally, I think it was 2 days ago, I interviewed a guy in person, and he's actually a Muslim. He goes to my college, and it was interesting to talk about religion, but then he was saying how useful it was for him to meditate, for him to tap into, the thoughts that were important, or, to wash away all of the thoughts that were distracting him from, what was important. And we actually did this like 15-minute meditation session with some calming music, and it almost felt psychedelic in some sense, where it's like, wow, no more. I've been living with distractions my entire life, and now that I've kind of washed all those distractions away, thoughts are coming up that I never thought of, and I just feel way more clear. And it's so interesting. And I actually come from a community maybe similar to yours, where meditation was sometimes viewed as like, why are you meditating? You should be praying instead. And in my opinion, those things are so interconnected, and we don't even fully understand either of them. And it's like, I feel like it's such an untapped resource, as well as psychedelics, for people. And
100%. I mean, I was talking like, when it comes to psychedelic use, the integration is very important. And
explain that to people.
Yeah, like, so you have this trip, you have this journey, you have this blissful experience, and you're connected with everything, and you feel all this inspiration and power, and then you wake up the next morning and you're back to old Joe, and you're like, well, fuck. So that's why these practices are so important, because the psychedelic state shows you what's possible. It like lets you access it for a second. So Neem Karoli Baba, he was this incredible being. He was Ram Dass's teacher. He worded it very nicely. He said, psychedelics are like having a meeting with Christ, but it would be better to become Christ, right? Like, you get to access this realm for a moment. And which is important, because now you have something to aim towards. Now you're like, oh, there is a reality in which I can be connected with everything, in which I can love everybody around me. Like, that's always there. This plant just removed everything in the way momentarily and allowed me to connect into that. So when we do these practices like breath work and, eating, refining our diet, and meditations, and just find ways to like come into our heart, we can start moving through the world in a psychedelic state. You know what I mean? Because like, it's not necessarily practical to eat an eighth of shrooms every day, but it is practical to do that, once every couple months, go to that place, recenter, and then work on integration in your daily life. So important.
Yeah, because keep going.
I feel like in my experience with people, like a lot of people today in society, like our age, have had psychedelic experiences, but not necessarily all of them are living, in an integrated state. A lot of them are actually depressed. And I think that comes down to the fact that, you see what's possible, and then you go back to your daily life where you are still doing these like old paradigm bad habits, because the mushrooms will expose like, hey, bro, you have a drinking problem. Or, hey, why are you smoking cigarettes? These kinds of things. Why are you hanging out with that person? And, when you have the experience and then you continue to do those things, go against your soul, I like to say, it sucks. It sucks. So you have to like make sometimes hard decisions in your day-to-day life. That's the integration. The integration is cutting off that person, or weaning off of that, tobacco, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, I feel like I've kind of tried to integrate my experiences into my day-to-day life, like such as like I used to be kind of closed off to people, or kind of more judgmental to people. And then I had this experience with shrooms, and it was like, Harley, you need to give people the benefit of the doubt. Everyone's just human. They might not have gotten the same facts as you. They were born in a different environment. love them first before you just shun them or judge them or give them the evil eye. And ever since then, I'm like, I feel like sometimes I'm too open-minded to people. Maybe not too open-minded, but like sometimes I'm like, I'm so accepting and so, wow, man, this person's so interesting. They're their own human, you know? I,
Yeah.
it,
I mean, that's the thing is like we have to realize that we're all deeply connected with one another, not only with the world around us, but like with each other. And you shift you the psychedelics, those experiences. It doesn't even have to be through psychedelics, but you get to this shift where instead of being closed off and then making them earn your love, you give them love first. You greet them with love, and then you feel them out. And then if they give you a reason to maybe feel like you need to distance yourself from them, then you make the energetic tie. You love them from afar and you kind of distance yourself energetically, instead of moving through the world paranoid and not trusting anybody. It's like, like you said, give people the benefit of the doubt, trust that they are a good person. Because you meet people and you start going deep with them. I'm a talker. I love to have like conversations with people I meet. And you realize like, holy fuck, this person's like incredible. But I would have never known if I was just like, oh, like, what do they know? Just by like looking at them.
yeah, truly. I feel like, Jesus, well, this book I'm reading is somewhat convincing me, like, the communion, like, take, eat, become like me. Like, I feel like this is maybe a heretical opinion according to a lot of Christians, but I feel like Jesus was a person who was utilizing this psychedelics to, reach that state and help others reach a state of loving others and self-reflection and healing those in need. And like,
Yeah.
I what would Jesus do? He would love first, exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Instead of being closed-minded, we're we're open and accepted. We might say something like, I, I feel like sometimes people have this idea where it's like, oh, he said something that was, he's judging me, when in reality, sometimes your best friend is someone who can give you a little bit of harsh truth. Sometimes that a little bit of harsh truth, like, hey, I see you're going off the wrong path. Like sometimes that's the deepest form of love. And,
Oh,
like I sometimes get annoyed when people are like, oh, ignore all the haters. Oh, if someone's negative, oh, I'm like, that's okay, especially if they're criticisms have zero weight. But if the criticisms have weight, you might as well be humble because, they might be really trying to help you out. And I feel like
oh.
I don't know, like you saying, live your truth. I like that to a point because sometimes someone else's truth might actually help update your truth in that language. You know what I'm saying?
Most certainly. Um, oh man, I had a thought there. I forgot. Oh yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's
No, here we
yeah.
go. The things that trigger you are your greatest teachers.
Mm,
Truly, truly. Let me explain.
yeah.
When Oh my God, when you post something on social media and you have 10 comments and 9 of them are people saying, "Love this, it's amazing." And there's that one comment of this person who's challenging your idea. And me as a content creator who's getting, thousands of comments a week, it's I've had to learn to not, because people just like block them and like they're a hater. And that exists. There are
Sure.
trolls. There are
Sure.
trolls.
Definitely.
But if somebody challenges your idea and you all of a sudden it shows you, it exposes the holes in your idea, which is valuable because then it makes you question, why do I believe this? Do I still believe this? And then also, how can I refine this idea based on their feedback? I'll give you a funny example.
Yeah.
I was at my friend Jeff's house yesterday, and I was telling him how I think peace is overrated as like a virtue of something we should strive towards in our daily life. Just given the circumstance that we're in, I feel like now is where we need to step into our warrior spirit. And because we are living through a revolution and we have two options here. We either be peaceful and non-violent, and we let these systems keep killing the planet and killing us, or we stand up and howl and say no more, and we come into our power. And he really gave me a great perspective on peace. He's like, yeah, but what are you fighting for?
Great question.
Peace. You're fighting for peace. You're fighting for the very thing you're saying you shouldn't strive for. You're fighting. What am I doing? I mean, I'm fighting a battle right now. Like, I'm like, the content I'm putting out and the ideas I'm bringing is questioning all of this, questioning this structure. So like, I am a warrior, but it really I mean, it was amazing. And it would have been very easy for me to just like shut him out and be like, oh, well, I'm the one with all these ideas. These are my ideas. Like, I don't need, but like, that perspective is now going to help me communicate my vision so much more clearly and be rooted in so much more truth, because I was like, fuck, the very thing I'm saying is irrelevant is the actual thing I'm fighting for deep down. So, you know, just being open to somebody's opposing idea. And, you know, that's another thing with meditation and with all this stuff, is like, the ego will flare up and want to just defend its existence and its ideas. But when you practice putting the ego to the side on a daily basis, then you can like take in this information. Like, if he would have had this conversation with me 2 years ago, like, I probably would have been like triggered and like, but like, I was able to like be like, whoa, I was able to take in what he said and see how it can be applied to my life. So I think even though it still triggers me. Like, I'm not gonna act like the ego will get flared up. But when you have an awareness that you are not that ego, you are not that mind, you are the thing behind it, observing it, then you can see, oh, my ego's getting flared up here. Let me see what this is all about. And you don't play into it, if that makes sense. Sure. You know, when you think that you are your mind, you play into everything and you react, you become reactive. You know, and I think the whole key is not reacting, being able to observe without giving a reaction. And that comes by, you know, observing from a different seat, you know, because we all are a divine light being. We are the universe encapsulated into this fungal body. We can tap in with that. We can sit from our higher self and observe what's going on. Like that conversation yesterday, I was able to sit up here and watch it go down, as opposed to being right here and being all, you know, but that's not my idea, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? That makes sense.
Sure, definitely. Yeah. Like, yeah. I'm kind of a fan of Jordan Peterson. Some people like him, some people don't, but I like his practical, you know, advice. And one thing that he says, one of my favorite rules is assume the person you're talking to might know something that you don't. And it's like, man, it's so true, because it's like, you know, that your friend Jeff, that opinion of, he probably knows something I don't. He's probably trying to just help. He's not trying to just cut me down. And
right.
You know, it's so true. And it's helped me be a more humble person to kind of apply that to my life, and almost a more self-reflective person. Because, you know, I listen with open ears typically with most people, you know, like in that loving way. And, you know, if they have something interesting to say, I'll intake it and integrate it. And, you know, another thing that Peterson says is, you know, the things that are the most important to you, or things that you should look at the most, are where you least want to look. You know, like that comment that's saying, hey, you're viewing the world from a maybe slightly off perspective. And it's like, it's painful to look down that route, because, you know, every human has these confirmation biases. You know, it's nice to confirm them and it's nice to get that pinpoint view, but then you see something out on the corner and you're like, oh, I don't want to look there. Oh.
Yeah.
But if you do, you know, you're going to find something that it's almost your destiny.
You're liberated.
Found there. Yeah. You know, you're free from your bias, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, you can break this down on a spiritual perspective. Literally, Taoism, Hinduism, Buddhism, they all say the same thing. Attachment is the root of suffering. You know, so when you are so attached to your idea, that's why you suffer. But when you can not attach to anything, that's like a big practice in my life. is never being attached to anything. Like if I have plans, I will cancel them as soon as I made them. I will, you know what I mean? And I don't feel bad about that. And I will change my mind 1,000 times on something. You know, attachment is how we keep a narrow view of the world. But when we're not attached, that's how we can flow. That's how we can flow through life. You know, if you create a schedule, and I know Peterson's big into making a schedule, which I think is valuable, but it's not about the schedule. It's about the intention behind the schedule. It's not about the schedule itself. It's about putting intention into how you allocate your time. But, you know, if you just constantly try to map out your whole life,
Sure.
it's never going to go according to plan. And if you can't course correct and if you can't pivot, it's going to be very hard to like live a flowy, you know, open life. You're constantly going to be stressed because you know, we make plans and God laughs, you know, God laughs.
That's beautiful.
You know, we're like, we have to play our part in this cosmic dance. You know, we have to be willing to move with the wind and move with and flow like water, you know, as Bruce Lee would say.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so just letting go of attachment, you know, it's such a huge thing, and it sounds simple. But you know, any belief, any ideology can be a cancer to you. Anything, even if you think that you have the best view, the best belief, and you've broken paradigm after paradigm, you know, you went through Christianity, you went through this, and now you're like, this is what God is. You still can't attach to it, though. It's great to entertain the idea, and for me and you to have a conversation, for me to say, hey, at this moment in time, this is what I believe. But if me and you hop back on in 2 months, and I don't feel that way, I need to be willing to admit that and live by that and say that. I think that's so important.
Man, I like that a lot. I'd never even heard of that before. Attachment leads to suffering. And
yeah,
like I can see like some things said as blanket statements can be dangerous. You know, like maybe your girlfriend Mackenzie, you're attached to her. Like you don't want to just say, "Oh, I'm not attached to her." Like I'm just trying to find nuances. Or would you agree that being attached?
we literally look at each other and say, "I don't need you." As much as we love each other, we both know that we do not need each other, and that if the time came where we weren't flowing, we wouldn't cling. I mean, that's how serious it is, you know? Like we want to be together. We love each other, but I don't need her. And it sounds crazy in our modern world to say, you know, your wife, you know, the mother of your children, like, I don't need you. But that's the level of freedom and of, you know, of being, of freedom that you can get to when you don't attach to anything. And when you want something from somebody else, it creates an underlying paranoia in them, a subconscious paranoia, which limits your ability to fully connect. So when she's fully grounded in herself and I'm fully grounded in myself, and we don't need or want anything from each other in order to be happy, then we can fully connect. You know, if she was relying on me in this way and I was relying on her in this way and we were codependent, there's friction when we try to come together. There's something in the middle. There's something in the way. Does that make sense?
It does in some sense. It's so new. I'm like, this is interesting. We grow up in this environment where it's like you get married and you know you're attached to that person for life, and you know like.
But that's not how that's not how nature works. That's not how nature operates. You know, that entire belief right there that you just said. I mean, that is all new. I mean, when you look at human existence, that is a new way of thinking. That is strictly due to the dogma that we're born into in the Bible Belt or in the, you know, Western culture. You know, that is not intuitive. by any means. That is not how nature operates. Do I plan on being with her for the rest of my life? Yes, I do. Yes, I do, but I'm not attached to it.
But God laughs at plans.
Exactly. That's why I'm not attached to it.
There we go. Okay.
You know, I will go to great lengths. Like I would die for her. I would go to the edge of the earth for her. But I'm still not attached.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. It's an internal shift,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah, like I guess that kind of helps with the idea that, you know, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. You know, who knows? You never know when someone's going to die. You never know when plans are going to shift. You know, be willing to, you know, pull an audible, which is kind of like changing of a plan, you know. It's
so
interesting.
Important.
Yeah.
My whole life is built on that, by the way. I mean, everything I'm doing, you know, if I would have planned it out like this, it could have never happened. Like I didn't plan out this stuff. Like this is all strictly acting on inspiration.
Amazing. So what inspires you to do what you do? And what gets you out of bed in the morning?
I'll tell you what, man, I have a hard time sleeping. I'm so excited to wake up and start creating content. You know, I felt invisible for a majority of my life. Like I went through school literally like asking myself, like, do I even exist? You know, because I had no, you know, we live in a culture where, you know, we're not nurturing children's gifts, their innate gifts. We're trying to conform them to behave in a certain way. But so my whole thing these last few years has been shedding all of that programming and conditioning and letting my true self, like who I was made to fucking be, letting that resurface and like fully embodying that, if that makes sense. And for me, I've always been a communicator. And that is what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about sitting here and talking to you. I'm passionate about sharing, making a meme and sharing it. You know, that is what I'm passionate about. So it's been for me, it's been this constant wiping off the windshield and seeing like what is worth communicating. Like what is worth, like I'm going to talk. No matter what, you know, I could go the comedy route. I could go the entertainment route. You know, I could go all these routes. I'm going to talk. Like whether I'm going to fucking be, you know, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like I could start a comedy podcast. Like I could do all these things. I'm going to talk regardless. But, you know, through the meditation, through the getting still, through all of this, I've realized what I'm passionate about. And that is honoring your soul's purpose in this life and shedding the, you know, we live in a very, it's just a fact. We live in a very sick society. We live in a very mentally ill, confused society that has been ripped from the Gaian womb and thrown into offices with blue light and fake food and toxic chemicals, working towards meaningless tasks, serving some corporation that's mining your consciousness for profit. I mean, it's absolutely so counterintuitive, so ass backwards. So my great mission and passion and purpose as of now in this life is helping shift that paradigm and usher in a new reality, you know, where we are all hanging out naked under the sun and, you know, eating fresh fruit and, you know, doing things like work. Work is a part of life, but the reason people hate work is because they're doing soul-sucking tasks, meaningless tasks that they don't even want to be doing, you know? And, you know, we can get to a place where we're kind of doing, my work is shit that I'm passionate about and that I enjoy doing. And that's what I want for everybody. I just want everybody to find out what it is that sets their soul on fire and what gets them out of bed in the morning and to do that. Because if we were all doing that, imagine what our society would be like. A bunch of healthy, happy, passionate individuals, as opposed to a sick, tired, depressed. That's what we're living in.
Polarized.
That's
Yeah.
our society right now, bro. I mean, that's the truth. Like, most people fucking hate their reality. And that is sad. And that, you know, they say if you don't know what you're passionate about, figure out your biggest pain and make that your passion.
Mm.
And, you know, that's what I kind of did a few years ago. I was like, my biggest pain is seeing people do shit they hate. Because it's always been in me. Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur. Like, I've been making a living off like Instagram since I was 16 years old. Like, I was selling diet plans in the bodybuilding days, like all this stuff, you know? So I've always kind of like done what I enjoyed. And that doesn't mean it's easy, and that doesn't mean I got rich, and that doesn't mean this or that, but I've always lived on my own terms, and it's super liberating. And that's kind of what I want for people. I just want them to feel this feeling that I feel, you know, this connectedness, that's what it is. It's the connectedness. I feel connected to everything I'm doing. I feel connected to every person I interact with, you know, and every activity, every word that comes out of my mouth, every piece of food that goes into my stomach, I feel connected with it. And that's what I want. So that's what I wake up every day and think, how can I communicate this to the world?
Wow. That's amazing. What would be your advice to someone who's listening to this? They're in their cubicle and they're not really enjoying their time. You know, what would be the first steps you would recommend for them?
Well, I think you need to get really real about what it is that's holding you back and what's making you feel like you need to do that. I have no empathy for people who don't have kids, you know, because I've done all this. I have done all of this in the craziest situation you guys could not imagine. You know what I mean? Like being a teen dad and like all this stuff. Like, if you are working a job that you hate and you don't have kids, and the only reason you're doing it is because you feel like you need to do it, you really need to take a deep look into why you feel like you need to do it. And you need to explore the possibility of other realities. And you know, like for me, I always use this example, you know, like I love the big island of Hawaii. I'm getting land there. I'm building an off-grid commune there. I love it. And that is one of the only places, you know, in the US that you can go sit naked on the beach and smoke weed and eat fresh papayas. You know, and I always say, I'm like, man, everybody should experience this. So, dude, if I didn't have kids, what I would tell these people, you know, if you have kids, you have to get a little bit more calculated with it, like I've had to do. You know what I mean? But I feel like a lot of your listeners probably don't have kids.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, listen, like, yeah, if you have kids, I would suggest following me and then like seeing how I'm moving and, you know, maybe get more strategic with it. And maybe you have to, you know, stay up late and work on your side project and, you know, that kind of thing, which I've done and you can do. But if you have nothing holding you back other than ideas of what you ought to be doing, I think that you just make a radical shift. I think you just quit, really. And it's easy. It's so easy for me to say, but like, you will figure it out. People think that they're just going to like end up, you know, dead and broke on the street. Like, you'll figure it out. Like, we live in a really cool world where you can download the DoorDash app. I DoorDashed my way across the country. And during that time, I went and had experiences and did podcasts and met people that planted seeds that bear fruit now in my life. So I say you just need to make a radical jump. You know, our environment, like this is scientific, our environment dictates our reality. It dictates our state of being. It has a huge influence. Going to a new place, you are a new person, quite literally. So I think everybody needs to push the reset button. And if you can't afford a trip, like a destination, you can afford a trip. You know, that's what a trip is. You know, spend $30 on an eighth of mushrooms and go on a trip and break pattern, go to a new environment and, you know, see these other realities that exist. You know, the person in the cubicle, if they're just doing it because, you know, they want to, most people are doing things because of other people, because they want their, you know, they're 29 years old and they want their mom and dad to, you know, be able to say, oh, he works at so-and-so and he has a house, you know, and he, you know, but like, what is that getting us? You know what I mean? Like, I look at like my cousins and stuff who are like going to college and, you know, the family's praising them. And like, I'm out here like fucking starting a revolution. And they're like, oh, what's he even doing? You know, it's like, it like blows my mind, but I don't need their validation. That's the fucking good part. You got to get to that point where you don't need anybody's validation. And it starts by, you know, you got to get comfortable with yourself. You know, I always say this, all of this that I preach about, it's an inside job first. It's an inside job. And then that manifests into your physical reality. So if you quit your office job and you don't know why you're quitting, it's going to be a lot harder to move through that reality. If you just hear me say, quit your job, and you're like, oh, maybe I should quit my job. No, don't take my word for it. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Like, intention is what's missing from the modern world. Our ancestors had intention with everywhere they went, every move they made, every piece of food that they cooked and prepared and put in their body, everything, every person they interacted with, like, there's intention. Nobody has intention anymore. We're just floating through the world doing things because we feel like we ought to do it. We're like eating in the car while we're listening to some music and like thinking about stuff. Like, there's just like no intention, right? So I think we have to come back to intention. Like, why am I? And you have to come back to, like, we are energetic beings and we only have so much energy to give. Are you happy with the energy exchange between you and your job? Is it draining you more than it's lifting you up? If so, you need to explore other routes, because that's not sustainable. That's how you end up overweight and escaping through food and getting on pharmaceutical antidepressants to try to numb yourself because your soul is screaming at you. You know, this is deep shit. And I have a rather, some people say, intense way of communicating this. But, you know, you're a Peterson fan, and, you know, as he would say, you know, if you're going to speak, and you're going to like be a truth seeker, you have to be okay with ruffling feathers, and you have to be okay with, you know, possibly hurting somebody's feelings. And it's not that you're a bad person and that's your intent, but if they're clinging to an idea and your idea challenges that, just like we were saying, you know, you have to deal with them, you know, being pissed off. But anyway, this is such a long answer.
That's amazing.
I hope there's value in that for somebody.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
And we're at the hour mark. Are you needing to head out? Do you want to continue?
Yeah, I gotta pee. We can go a couple more minutes.
It's up to you.
If you have anything that you would want to wrap up with.
I feel like that was a pretty solid way to end it. You know, the advice to people. And, you know, I work as like I'm actually the right-hand man to my mom with her company. And so I have a flexible style job. So it's easy for me to kind of relate to you because, you know, I kind of go with the flow. I work when I want. I can travel and work remotely. I'm very blessed for this. But for, you know, people who, you know, they're working as an electrician or they're working in a cubicle, it's like sometimes people are truly passionate about it. We don't want to say, like, you know, some people truly love what they do. They love making a difference in the world.
Yes.
But for the people who really don't feel as if they're making that much of a difference, you know, follow Jarrett's advice. You know, maybe sometimes thinking internally and figuring out what your ideas are normally going to be stupid at first, but if you pursue them, maybe they won't be stupid. You know, you got to make mistakes. And
yes.
And like,
safety is an illusion, bro.
It truly is. Secure. Oh, I have a secure job. You're secure until, you know, businesses crumble all the time and people get fired all the time. It's like, how secure are you really?
Right.
If you're, you know, needing someone else's, you know, paycheck to survive. And yeah, it's interesting advice. You know, like in my spare time, I've created this podcast. It doesn't bring me income yet, but I see in the future that it can. And, people that have ideas, go out and do it. Don't care what your parents say, what your friends say, especially if you feel this is where your soul is taking you, like Jarrett would say. And I really respect that I like your motto in life, and I'm going to keep following you and see where you're going, because I want to keep connecting. And
yeah, man, we can do this again for sure.
Certainly.
I'll leave with one couple words right here. Support your dreams until your dreams support you. So don't make excuses, right? Maybe you might not be able to quit your job today, but instead of going home after your job and escaping on Netflix and on, podcasts and stuff, start using these apps. Distribution is free. Anybody can start a podcast. Anybody can start a YouTube channel. Anybody can start a Shopify store and go to Teespring and ship shirts on direct. You can do it. But you have to support these dreams until they support you. And I have constantly done that. I have constantly done things for money. Like my main passion is podcasting, making, music, t-shirts, that kind of thing. But I have a client service business where I run other people's social medias. That's not my passion, but it's lucrative and it allows me to fund all of this. So, you know what I'm saying? So support your dreams, but as long as you have that greater vision that you're working towards, that stuff will be easy. It'll be easier to go to work and easier to save money if you know why you're doing it and you know where you're heading with this. So yeah, I think everybody, I just really like that saying, support your dreams until your dreams support you, because I'm living proof to tell you your dreams will start supporting you. I'm living through it right now. But it took years. It took years, but it's better that it happens at all than never. It's like, what are you going to do? Work at a job for 40 years in hopes to retire one day? It's like, why not just grind for a couple years, especially if you're listening to this and you're fucking like in your 20s, dude. Like, holy shit, you got your whole life. Even if you're 47, you know what I mean? You're going to live another 40 fucking years. You know what I mean? Or whatever. It's like, do you want those to be miserable? I'm a big proponent on dying on your own sword. If it doesn't work out, at least I went out on my turn. At least I didn't get fired from the job that I didn't even like. If it doesn't, because you can always go get a job.
Certainly.
Why not? We're in a very amazing time right now that will go away. I feel like at some point, this opportunity to be able to build a platform and to be able to like build a brand and do it all for free, distribute it for free. It's unbelievable. Truly and I just think more people need to. It is a miracle, and your fucking grandfather would be rolling in his grave if he knew what you were complaining about right now. So I just encourage everybody to take a deep look at that and understand this amazing time we're living through and see how you can get your peace. And I think the best way to get your peace is by giving. If you want to turn your podcast into a big podcast where, you're monetizing it, you need to be giving out good content. It's giving. If you were sitting on here just talking about yourself and talking about how people need to buy your product, no one's going to watch. But if you're giving good information, inspiration, entertainment, whatever it is, good things come back to you.
I love that. It's a perfect place to end.
Boom. Good stuff.
Thank you so much, Jared. It's been a true pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks everybody for listening. You can just follow me at Soul of Jarrett. Yep. I answer every DM. If you guys have anything, just DM me. So
yeah, I'll throw all your stuff in the description below.
Cool. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to the Harley Seelbinder Podcast, where deep questions are asked. If this podcast impacted you positively, be sure to share it with your friends, for I'm sure it will impact them positively as well. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.